live from the Counterpunch Media mobile studios in Grand Blanc, Michigan. It's time for real lives, real families, real fitness. It's time for Derek Noel Fitness.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 16? We're on episode 16 of Derek Noel Fitness Live, and today we're going to be talking about an awesome topic. We're bringing it back. We're pulling back the nerdiness a little bit after we went in and dug in real deep for energy systems last week. If my words kind of trail off a little bit, I apologize. I am fresh off of a weekend-long nutrition seminar, so there's a lot of information that has entered the cabeza, so just bear with me. But like I said, it's going to be a really good show today, and we'll be able to talk about a little bit how what we learned last week can kind of apply into what we're talking about today. And it's going to be really, really cool. Real quick, we're going to be talking about fitness. We're going to be talking about different skills. As we're going through this today, I really want you to think of things that you are strong at and things that you're weak at. Actually, we're going to make this a little interactive, or I'm going to try to. So, what I would like you to do right off the bat, whether you are watching this later on or you are watching this live and you're keeping up with me right now, is I would like you to start creating a list of what you think the 10 general physical skills are. Now, if you have been with me or you are someone from boot camp, you may have heard me talk about these. You may remember seeing this on a list at the gym at some point. Just bear with me. We're going to explain how everything is going through it. So, as we're getting started, I want you to, in the comments below, I want you to list off one thing that you think you are strong at and one thing you think you're weak at. And this is before we even talking about skills. These do all have to do with physical activity, by the way. So we're going to be going through everything. I just want to see where we're at mentally, what we think we're strong at, what we're weak at. Because, spoilers, everyone is very strong in a few of these things and can be very, very weak in a couple other ones. No one is ever absolutely outstanding at the top of the level or at the top when it comes to every single one of these. There's always going to be a weakness there. That's just how us as humans react and how we go. So, what are these 10 physical skills and where did they come from? Well, they actually originated from a book way back in the day, and then they got adapted through things like CrossFit. And I actually came across these when I was listening to another podcast called The Body of Knowledge with Dr. Andy Galpin, who is a muscle physiologist at Cal State Fullerton. He specializes in how do muscles actually work. And one of his co-hosts for that was Kenny Kane, who owns Oak Park CrossFit out in California. And they were talking about this, and it really struck a chord with me, and I really wanted to pass this information along. So if you ever want some more information on that, please go check out the podcast. Actually, you really should just check out the podcast, The Body of Knowledge. Anyways, they have 2 volumes out now, and the information is amazing, and it goes through the history of physical training, where the whole cardio versus strength training debate came in, everything. They go really in depth, they really nerd out, and it's really awesome, and they make it really easy to understand too, which is really nice. I'm always trying to find ways to make things easy to explain, and they do an awesome job at doing that. So like I was saying, if you're watching this live, drop your comments below what you think you're strong at, or as they're coming up and you didn't even think about it, say whether you're strong or weak. We're going to be talking about things, we're going to be talking about examples, we're going to talk about how to get better at them too, because a lot of them are going to fall into that. So, when we're talking about fitness, I really think that CrossFit, insert your jokes here, I really think that CrossFit has a good methodology or ideology on this. They basically base it off of, we have these 10 general physical skills. They also base it off of the ability to perform random tasks, which is why their workouts are always varied, because you never know what you're going to get. And your competency on the 3 energy pathways, so how your body reacts with those energy pathways. Sound familiar? We talked about energy pathways last week, so we should kind of know what that means now. If not, definitely go back. We talked about energy systems. I nerded out a lot. We talked about chemistry. I know people had bad flashbacks from like Krebs cycle in college, chemistry and stuff like that. So if that is not your jam, then basically recap, we have 3 energy pathways. We have one that runs off of like really short power duration. We have one, this is the moderate duration, which is where we start to feel the burn and stuff like that. And then we have a third one for very long, long-term submaximal, meaning basically long sustained, not pushing ourselves very hard. So if we're running a marathon, or if we're running like a 5K at a way slower pace, then we're getting into that. That's basically like a 45-second review of what we talked about last week, but let's jump into this. These 10 general skills are a great marker to tell your general level of fitness. And what I mean by that is there could be some people, like powerlifters, can be great at picking up heavy weights, but they might not be good at very many other movements. Like throw a powerlifter into a cardio setting and they hate their life because they're so bad at it and their body's not adapted to it. Does that mean that they're not fit? No, but it means that imagine if they could lift that weight and they had the cardiovascular endurance to be able to do those other things. That would mean that that person is a little bit more fit. I probably will get a little bit of flack for saying that, but it's just how it is. That's how I feel on it. Many people are great in a few of these, really bad in a few of them, and they're okay in a lot of them. And every skill is developed a little bit differently. So let's start this list off. Like I said, there are 10 of them, so we got a little bit to talk about. The first one is endurance, and we're talking cardiovascular endurance, so that cardio thing I was literally just talking about. This one, and we're going to define all of these too. So the ability of your body's systems to gather, process, and deliver oxygen, your cardiovascular system. So how effective are we at breathing in and using the oxygen that our lungs are getting and pushing that into the bloodstream? That is cardiovascular endurance. How do we improve it? Well, we have different things. You can think about any typical traditional cardio thing: running, rowing, biking. If you're going out, basically anything that you're doing that's longer duration, that your lungs really start to burn, you really start to breathe heavy in because you're trying to get that oxygen in. For one, this is one that I am weak at. Right off the list, I'm weak at that one. Anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely hate running. If you like running, by all means, do it. Do what you like. I don't. Do I force myself to work this endurance system? Yes, I do, but I really don't enjoy it very much. Actually, the picture that I did was right before I did a track workout, and let me tell you, that was a lot of fun. So, how do we train our cardiovascular system? Well, by doing it, by training that system, forcing yourself to go through these. As a general aside, all of these are going to fall into one of 2 categories, really. There are a couple of them that are both. We are either going to be able to increase our capacity at these by training or by practice, or in the case in a little bit, there's going to be a little combination of both. We'll see what we do when we get there. So, if you are good at cardiovascular endurance or bad at cardiovascular endurance, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments below. Number 2, we have stamina. Now, endurance and stamina almost go hand in hand. The difference is basically, are we doing a strength exercise or are we doing an actual cardiovascular exercise? So if we're going with running, that's going to be endurance. If I'm trying to do a lot of push-ups, so if I'm trying to hit a new PR for how many push-ups I can do in a minute, that's where this comes into play. Stamina is the ability of your body's systems to process, deliver, store, and utilize energy. ATP is, which we talked about, is the primary mover. That's what our body uses to make these muscles contract, to make our body move. That's what stamina is. There's a little subtle difference there, but a good test for this is doing a 60-second how many push-ups can I do test. Again, this one is coming from training it. You get better at it by doing more of it, by trying to strengthen yourself through that. If you have a lot of stamina but not endurance, by the way, marathon runners are great on the endurance spectrum, not so much on the stamina spectrum, and bodybuilders are really good on the stamina spectrum, and depending on the kind of cardio that they do, they might be a little bit better at the endurance. So that's something to think about too. Number 3, by the way, for me, stamina, pretty decent. I have pretty decent stamina, just cardiovascular, Number 3 is strength. This is my favorite one. Strength is, simply put, The ability for a muscular unit, so your muscle fibers, or a combination of them, so like your muscles, to apply force. How strong can you be? So how much force can you exert on something? This one comes from training as well. It comes in the form of your heavy things like heavy deadlifts. Those things where you're just lifting something up off the ground. So something like a bench press or something like a squat. Those big heavy lifts really help train the strength part of your body. How strong can we make our muscles? If you're going for hypertrophy, you might not necessarily make them stronger. Hypertrophy, by the way, means basically making the muscles get bigger or growing more muscle fibers to go. It can be used interchangeably. I know what I just said isn't technically correct, but that's a whole other show. I'm not going to talk about the difference between like hypertrophy and hyperplasia and stuff like that. Beyond the scope of this episode, I'm sure I'll talk about it in the future. When I do, I will throw this back. So strength, like I said, comes from heavy lifting. This is my jam. I love strength work. I'm a power lifter, heavy deadlifting, heavy benching, heavy squatting, things like that. They all come from training. You get stronger by picking up heavier objects progressively. You don't get stronger by picking up light objects very quickly or anything like that. That's going to help build your stamina or even your endurance. Number four, flexibility. Flexibility is the ability to maximize your range of motion at a given point. Does touching your toes kind of fall into this? Yes. Can you touch your toes? Ideally, the human body should be able to bend over and touch your toes. Some people can't, especially here in America. The one that I like to use more preferably for this is, can you squat below parallel? Can you get your hips underneath your knees, basically, when you're squatting down? I'm not going to squat down. Camera's too high up for that. But it's a really good test. Perfect mobility, flexibility is a thing. You can train that. You become more flexible by stretching more or by going through the full range of motion more often. You don't want to force the full range of motion, especially if the muscles around your joints are super tight, but you do want to be able to ease your way into that. There's some ways to kind of cheat it a little bit. For example, if we're doing a squat and we can't quite get below parallel, if it's an ankle problem, one thing that we can do is wear lifters, so wear shoes with a raised heel, or even stand on a couple plates only with our heels to raise ourselves up. That will help us open up that range of motion in our ankles and allow us to squat a little bit lower. If you're someone who has never squatted below parallel before, I recommend you try that, providing you have good form. If you don't have good form, if you start your squat with your knees, for example, and we do the little Michael Jackson squats, the whole plate trick isn't going to help you out very much. Again, squatting below parallel is a really good one. Overhead mobility, overhead flexibility is also a really good one. A lot of people lack the shoulder flexibility or even the chest flexibility to be able to do those things. Or people who are constantly rounded, have their shoulders constantly rotated inwards, might be lacking some flexibility in their chest too. So keeping these things in mind. I am not very flexible. We're going to get through number 5 and then we'll take a break. So number 5 and number 6, I actually switched. So number 5 is speed, which is the ability to minimize the time cycle of a repeated movement. What that means is basically how quickly can you move through a movement repeatedly. Something like a sprint is a really good example of this. If you're going for a 40-yard dash, you're not running for very long, your cardiovascular endurance isn't really tested that much, but you need to move quickly. So how quickly can we get our legs moving in order to go? Or if you are a boxer, how quickly can we get those hips moving in like an ollie shuffle? Things like that is speed. This one is one of those weird things. This is the first one where practice comes into play. You can practice your speed and you can train it as well. So you can do things to get faster, but you can also just practice movements and get better at them. And that practice, which is actually, in case there's any confusion because they might be different, training is a physical aspect. So our bodies will physically get better at it. Practice is a neurological thing. So how well our brain talks to the rest of our body. So if there's any confusion about that, that's what I mean. So a combination of training and practice means we can get faster just from our bodies going through and training to get faster, or it might be even be something like dropping our weight a little bit to allow ourselves to become lighter and move faster, or it can become a neurological thing. So if you're really bad at a movement, and then as you get better at it, you learn how to run better, those things, keep that in mind. So like I said, we're 5 in, we're going to take a quick break.
You're listening to Derek Noel Fitness here on IPMNation.com/counterpunch. He'll bring the smarts. Now the sweat, well, that's up to you.
And we are back. So, I'm just checking the feed real quick. I know we got a few people watching. Heidi is saying cardio thumbs down. I agree. Tiffany is saying bad at cardio. Again, same. I feel like there's a recurring theme here. And Heidi is saying that flexibility is a strength for her. And I can attest to that. She knows flexibility is not a strength for me. That is definitely a weakness that I've actively been working on. And I actually don't mind working on that one, mainly because it's not running. So, real quick, let's get back to this list. We're halfway through this thing. And number 6 is power. So, and you'll find out why I switched 5 and 6 in a second. Power is the ability to basically apply strength over a repeated movement. Or a minimized time. Sorry about that. So power is the ability to apply strength. So it is the ability for a muscular unit or combination of units to apply force in a minimized time cycle. So let's shorten that down. It is the ability to apply strength with speed. So now we're starting to combine things. We have strength, which we were talking about, and then we have speed, which we just talked about. Power is another one that can be trained through a combination, or that can be improved, I should say, through a combination of training and practice. The Olympic lifts are a really good example of this. Proficiently, for example, if I'm deadlifting, I have a lot of power out of the bottom of a deadlift. I can get through that one deadlift very quickly. Now, one thing that I have less practice with is the Olympic lifts. I am not good at the barbell snatch. I'm not super good at the barbell clean and jerk. It's not because I don't have the prerequisite strength to be able to pick up that bar. For example, I can deadlift over 400 pounds, so that transfer could be there. It's just neurologically, I don't have that practice in of being able to get through that movement. They are super technical movements, which requires a lot of practice moving through with the lighter weight in order to improve those numbers and move those larger numbers. So, power-wise, again, the ability to apply strength with speed. The Olympic lifts are a really good version of that because you don't see someone in the Olympics doing a 10 rep max snatch or a 10 rep max clean and jerk. It's usually one and done, and they get 3 attempts. They have to be as powerful as possible through that one pull. They have to be able to move through very quickly in order to apply that power. But let's think about this too. If we have power, we need strength and speed. So if we're speedy but we don't have the strength, what can we do to improve our power? Well, we can bump up our strength. Or if we have strength but we don't have speed, what can we do? We can improve that speed, whether it's through practice or something like that. We can lower our body weight to move quicker. Again, there are different ways to be able to do this, but keep that in mind. Let's move on to number 7. 7. And by the way, if you are just tuning in, make sure you drop in the comments below what you think you are strong at, what you think you might be weak at. And also, I want to know what you think you can do to improve. And I'll let you know if it's a good idea or not. I like this. We have some interaction going on. We haven't done one of these super interactive shows in a while. I'm digging it. So, number 7, coordination. This is the number one culprit of people saying, but Derek, I'm just not coordinated. What can I do? Or they don't think that they can become any more coordinated. What is coordination? It's the ability to combine distinct movement patterns into one. Jump rope, double unders, things like that. So you're jumping and you're rotating your wrists and you're getting the ropes moving. It's distinct different movements. One has nothing to do with the other. Jumping has nothing to do with twisting your wrists. But being able to combine them both into one, or being able to step into the lunge. Balance is going to come into play a little bit later, spoilers. But being able to do these things, coordination can only be improved with practice. Doing things neurologically will make you more coordinated. One of the best things you can do is if you're doing a footwork drill and you are almost stumbling over your own feet, you are hitting the point where your body will have to think about different ways to become more effective at coordinating that movement. So think about that. Coordinating, I'm moving my arms, I'm moving my legs. Technically different, distinct, but they're still there. Like I was saying, coordination is the number one thing that people say that they just don't have. They're not coordinated. We're going to talk about mindset things in a while, but just remember, you can get better at every single one of the things I am listing. It is not a lost cause as long as you don't believe it's a lost cause. Number 8 is agility. So if someone is very agile, that is the ability to minimize transition time from one movement to another. So you can think about this as a combination of basically coordination and speed. Again, you can only get better at this with practice. Things like box jumps, because you have to transition from a jump almost into a squat in order to land on the box. Burpees, where you're doing multiple things all at once. Being able to shift movements, so bringing it back to CrossFit. I'll use the example of the workout Fran, mainly because I have to do that later this week, and I'm definitely not looking forward to it, but it's something that needs to be done. In case you don't know, Fran is a couplet, meaning 2 exercises of 21 reps, 15 reps, and then 9 reps of thrusters, so of barbell thrusters and pull-ups. Don't really need to know exactly what it is, but an example of agility would be being able to, endurance and stamina aside, being able to quickly transition from doing a thruster and then jumping up and doing pull-ups. If you need that second in order to get coordinated to jump up, that's where that agility might come into play, or lack thereof. Or quickly being able to move around a field. So if you see a really agile running back, for example, in football, that's another example of agility. Again, you can only get better at it by practice. The more you move your feet quickly, the better you'll get at moving your feet quickly. The more you practice these things, the better you'll get at them. People ask me how I can jump so high. Number one, I used to be 240 something pounds. So all of a sudden when I am almost 80 pounds lighter, it's a lot easier to apply that force to jump up. And number two, I've had a lot of practice with it. I love doing things like jumps with those box jumps. I have a lot of fun doing it, so I do it for fun. It's also practice, so it's a lot of practice over time. Number 9 is balance. So if you're really poor at balance, I'm actually going to give you an exercise that you can do to improve your balance that you can do at home with nothing. But I'll talk about that in a second. Number 9 is balance. It is the ability to control your center of gravity in relation to your base. So basically, where's the center of gravity? If I'm balancing on one foot, center of gravity has to shift over here. Typically, it's in your core, somewhere around there, depending on, if you're top heavy or bottom heavy. It depends on everyone. But if I'm standing on one foot, the center of gravity, so I'm standing on my left foot right now. See, my leg is up. My center of gravity is over here on this leg that's down a little bit so that I can help balance. If it was over here, I would automatically fall over. It's something that you could practice, and I'm going to give you a drill in a second. But balance is another combination of things. You need the prerequisite strength in order to hold the position. You need a little bit of flexibility in most cases, and you need coordination. How can you practice this? Well, just like I was doing. I'm standing on one foot right now. I'm just almost falling over. So, standing on one foot right now, and I'm kind of, usually when you have your eyes open, you focus on a point, which in the definitely focus on a point. I'm pointing at you, by the way. And that focus point helps you balance. You have a base, your body subconsciously does a bunch of different things to help you balance. Now, if you do this, and I think I've kind of established standing here with standing on one foot, my balance is pretty good. Now, if I try and close my eyes where I have no center, and then I pick up my foot, all of a sudden my balance gets a lot worse. We're going to play with this a little bit. So what you can do is think about closing your eyes and trying to balance with your eyes closed, then when you open your eyes, you're going to get a lot better at it. And it's something that you can almost test, right, and you can see results from almost immediately when you start doing it. It really helps improve the balance. Your balance, and by the way, another example is an overhead squat where we have a barbell over our heads and we have to squat down and we have to try and keep that centered so that that bar doesn't fall forward, because if that center of gravity shifts too far forward, then all of a sudden we have lost the bar, we have failed our rep. So that's another thing. Balance comes from practice. Doing that drill where we close our eyes and try and balance can really help out. I have a couple tricks to get around that I'm not going to tell you because then it would be cheating, and nobody likes cheaters. So we got one left. The last one is accuracy, which, depending on the thing, I'm good at or I'm bad at. It is the ability to control movement in a given direction or at a given intensity. If you know what wall ball shots are, it's a really good example because you basically have a target above you and you have to squat down and then shove a med ball up and hit that target. If you don't hit the target, it doesn't count. If you're doing things sports-wise, if you're throwing a football and you can throw the football decently hard and get it down to a certain point and you're precise with it basically, technically there's a difference between precision and accuracy, but for intense here, it's kind of rolled into one. You're throwing the football and you can hit where you're aiming at. That is accuracy. Again, practice comes into play with that. So you have to practice hitting that target over and over and over again. If you never practice hitting the target, you don't know if you're going to be able to hit it. So these are the 10, like I was saying. Now that we've gone through these, do any of these line up with what you were thinking about? I see that I have some comments. I'll be looking at those in a second. But before I listed this off, mentally, hopefully you were thinking about different things that you were strong or weak at. Or maybe there were some things on this list that you didn't even think about, or you didn't know that were actually considered sessions of strength. All of these are important to becoming a more functional human being, is what I'm trying to say. That's what the gist of this one was about. In order to become a more functional human being, we have to get better at these things. Just because you are weak at something doesn't mean that you'll always be weak at something. You can get stronger at certain aspects. That being said, strength comes a lot more slowly than endurance, which is why sometimes, again, I'm using CrossFit, for example, they'll spend a lot of time working on their strength and their big movements, and then they'll spend a month or two working on their endurance, and it comes right back to them. It really is a different ballgame when it comes to strength. Strength takes years, endurance takes months, is basically how you can look at it. If you found yourself saying, oh no, I'm not coordinated, just not happening, or I just have terrible balance, I encourage you to think about opening up your mindset a little bit. Don't be fixed on the fact that you can't do something. Figure out how you can do something. Being able to have that growth mindset will allow you to open your mind. You'll become more open-minded towards things, and you'll see that, okay, yeah, I want to get better at being coordinated. And you stop blaming other things like genetics and things like that for your downfalls. Work on your downfalls. You can get better at them. You can eliminate them, or even turn some of those weaknesses into strengths, depending on what you do. You got to do them, though, in order to get better at them. Let's check out these comments real quick. Rachel is saying, flexibility is no good for me. Cardio is decent, but I don't enjoy it. Give me all the heavy things. Basically, same. Sorry, I was laughing at the next comment. But yeah, so flexibility, kind of just working on that full range of motion. And Rachel, I would actually challenge you on that flexibility thing because I know how deep you can squat below parallel, so you have some. You have more than you give yourself credit for. The next comment that made me laugh, Heidi goes, I'm not going to comment on coordination. I won't either. And Rachel mentioned that she is not agile at all, which again I would kind of challenge because I've seen that that footwork. So hopefully you got something out of this. Like I said, we were bringing it back to the basics, nothing too sciencey. And if you saw the episode last week on energy systems, you can kind of tell where we fall into these. So if we have great cardiovascular endurance, we're pretty good with those longer duration pathways. If we're great with strength or power, specifically power, we're really good with that first quick short duration path. Excuse me. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please drop them in the comments below. I will respond to you. If you would like to watch this later or share this with your friends, I would really appreciate it. Definitely share it with your friends. That would be great. You can also find this on YouTube. Or remember, every Tuesday, the audio version is dropped. If you'd like to listen to this again, you can listen to it wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a great night, everyone.